And I realized that in directing and holding space, and that was in a theatrical context specifically, but in holding space, I realized I could create an environment where other people wouldn't feel the same way that I felt going into it.
Wow.
So I went into directing specifically with the mindset of like, I never want an actor or anyone involved in the process to feel the way that I felt going into it. Because acting is horrific. You'd have 5-minute audition, a 15-minute audition where you have like a paragraph of text to make an offer with. And that 15 minutes of time in the actual room would have a week's worth of panic and anxiety and sleepless nights, and not eating beforehand, and just feelings of dread. And I quickly learned, cool, I'm not suited to this kind of like process.
And so I just want to say, who is Dan? Well, who are you?
Who are you? Who's Dan? Okay, who is this charismatic? Help me to pronounce.
Guys, you're trusting a Scottish accent to pronounce
do.
words as well.
I can hear
Charismatic?
charismatic.
It's very lovely. How would I describe myself? I started off as an actor.
Yes.
I really wanted to be an actor when I was young.
Yeah.
I didn't have an aptitude for school, at least not when I was in high school or primary school. And I didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew I kind of liked performing. I think I was a bit of an attention seeker.
I think
Still that.
to be honest,
Yes, I would agree.
platform.
Stay there. Yeah. And also everyone needs attention, right? I feel like, it's funny we hear like attention seeking as like a term in a lot in mental health. And yes, unhelpful like ways of attention seeking, but we all need attention, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, and like as a kid, I think one of the ways that I would go around that was through performance, different kinds of performing. And then, so I started off as an actor.
Can I just
Sorry, Peter.
I also want to
It's
say
a gift.
technology, it's a form. Technology can be either through your body, through your words, through your manner, that through your forms. I just want to acknowledge that what I did as I was not softening to what you say, because I felt that's unfair, because everybody have a different platform or form that they can like someone doing
I think that's something that I learned as well as I started doing that, and as I got a little bit older, I realized I wasn't a very good actor. Was good enough to kind of get by in certain roles in certain kind of spaces, but realized, I think actually with what you're saying around like energy and holding space and facilitation, there were technical reasons why, or technical skills that I wasn't very apt at for acting specifically, but I start to realize, I can hold a space pretty well. Like I can facilitate, and I can perform in different ways. And even if some of the technical stuff isn't happening, I know that people are still engaged with something.
Yes.
I didn't know what it was, but I knew that it was kind of there. So I shifted a little bit. I shifted from acting into, which I had moderate kind of success in, but not to the level that I kind of wanted to. And so I shifted a little bit. And towards the end of my studies, I shifted into directing, which I loved, went much better than acting and performing ever did. I realized that everything that had kind of tripped me up in performance and acting. So I was a very anxious actor, and a lot of the spaces that you're kind of thrown into, the expectations, like who you are performing for us, you have a very short amount of time and you have to make an impression. Like you have to make a bold choice and you have to make an impression, and you have to, not many environments where that was being asked of me suited the kind of anxiety and social ineptitude or kind of introversion that I also kind of experienced.
Yeah.
And I realized that I didn't have that technical ability. I could hold a space. And so I thought, okay, tried directing ago, and I realized that in directing and holding space, and that was in a theatrical context specifically, but in holding space, I realized I could create an environment where other people wouldn't feel the same way that I felt going into it. Wow. So I went into directing specifically with the mindset of like, I never want an actor or anyone involved in the process to feel the way that I felt going into it. Because acting is horrific. You'd have 5-minute audition, a 15-minute audition where you have like a paragraph of text to make an offer with. And that 15 minutes of time in the actual room would have a week's worth of panic and anxiety and sleepless nights and not eating beforehand and just feelings of dread. And I quickly learned, cool, I'm not suited to this kind of like process. And obviously like that process isn't going to change. So if I step into this directing role, I can have an influence on the way that I would hold that space and hold that relationship instead. And so, yeah, that kind of like shifted that journey a little bit.
Yeah, I just say to show that the humanity you carry in the sensitivity of how people feel, to be honest. And that's what I thought as well. I think in any career where anyone will be judged so harshly, because in competition, a lot of people training for years and suddenly they have this moment to kind of decide their career. I don't feel enjoy that we go through it, but as a you really presenting yourself, not just yourself, your like, outlook, like your physique, your like being criticized and judged. It's very vulnerable, honestly.
It's fun. I think as well on that idea of it being judged quite harshly. I think acting has an ego reward that comes with it. I think I'm very earlier on skill set in a practice. I became aware of roles in the theater, but also I think universally, like mental health sector has this as well, right? So certain roles have an ego reward that come with them. And it is a reward, like getting to inhabit the spaces an actor does and the visibility that it has is like there's a feeling of joy that comes with that it feels good. The double-edged sword aspect of it and the downside of it is that when people see someone in a position where they have that reward, I think there can be a tendency to judge them quite harshly or in interesting and quite specific ways, especially in New Zealand, where kind of like the tall poppy syndrome thing is such a phenomenon. Like seeing someone in a position where they stand to gain a sense of like recognition and public or visible kind of recognition. It's quite common to see people jumping on that more harshly than they would other roles. And also justify it a little bit, this idea of like, oh, you're an actor, that people adoring you, you have people celebrating you. What do you mean you can't take a little bit of feedback? You can't take a little bit of honesty, even though like the level of critique, the level of honesty is so much higher and more just they give it would be for other roles, right? And yeah, you justify it with a sense of like, oh, you get to be the actor though. You get to be the actor, so you also get to deal with the critique as well.
Wow. That's interesting, but I really like to say it because and that not just externally you hold space, internally you also hold tremendous space of human psyche, to be honest, because you see a lot of feelings, emotions, and how society have. It's amazing. This is described. Yeah,
I feel like yes. I feel like that's true. My therapist just described it in a really useful way.
Yeah.
That I cannot remember. It's interesting because as well, like stepping into, especially going from arts world into mental health world, knowing that I don't come from a specialist kind of background in that, so I don't have kind of psychological knowledge or psychiatric knowledge. That's not where my skill set kind of lies. But having lived experience and having that specific expertise and that specific knowledge, I think a lot of the conversations that we have are, especially now actually, where the sector is pending lived experience. A lot of the conversations that we're having are around what is our expertise, what are the strengths of that expertise, which we've been doing for the past 20, 50 years. arguing for why lived experience knowledge is valuable. I think something that we're starting to see more and more as well is like, how do we actually start archiving that? How do we start framing it and writing it down and presenting it in a way that can be shared for other people as well? And that line between lived experience knowledge and clinical knowledge or psychiatric knowledge or psychological knowledge is, we're kind of entering into that realm as well.
I think what you might have been doing is beautiful because I know you guys go with forums and talking to people who encourage the patient, which is truly neat. And also I want to acknowledge that, like, because your community engagement, like that's part of your role. And so I agree because, like when you're talking about psychologists and all that, then it's true the evidence of human being, they're not study aliens, just human beings.
Yes. And humans are weird though.
Yeah.
Humans are bizarre.
Bizarre is like when you really look at how they come, like we all buy these notions that, okay, psychologists, where they get their knowledge from? Human beings.
Yeah.
It's not magic. Anyway, so
you're right though. You're right. We actually we spoke about this. I mean, me, myself, and my coworker Megan, we were at a conference at the beginning of this week, and we were speaking about lived experience and lived experience expertise, and that word expertise and knowledge, I think, is framing a lot of what we're doing at the moment. Like stressing in the way that we frame the work that we do, like stressing the fact that we are speaking to expert knowledge when we talk about community experiences. And
also I want to because like the work that you do, plus that's why you with people need feelings, able to have a wider emotion vocabulary, like through as an actor, through working with human beings constantly. So unpacking us, and that itself, when you put together psychologist is
yes,
it's really, isn't it?
I mean, because my avenue into it was through theater, and essentially, like when I say theater, I essentially mean storytelling in the sense of like, how do people use language and use narrative and the different forms that narrative can take to connect, to share stories, share information, also to kind of influence the world around them, like the impact of stories to change the world as well in specific ways, as well as kind of advocacy and things, but also, like a child coming home in school and asking their parents for stuff like that. There's storytelling in that, like the way a kid will ask to go and play with their friends or a snack from the fridge before dinner time, that has storytelling in it.
Wow.
The way that a co-worker will describe their workload so that they can advocate for getting like time off at a specific time with it. Like there's storytelling in that. There's storytelling is a strategy to influence the direction of things and change the world in that specific sense. Like those processes on a big sense, on a small micro sense, like that's what's always kind of fascinated me. And theater has a whole lot of that, and storytelling and the skills of storytelling are kind of the world of theater and performance. And to be honest, like my work in theater and starting there has had more benefit, I think, for my work in mental health than my sociology degree. And I love my sociology degree. Yeah, the theater work has always been kind of more influential, I think. And no, I mean that's but it's all kind of connected though. I mean, because I mean coming into lived experience and into so like starting as an actor, moving into directing, and then I suppose rounding that off, I went to what did I do? I did my first degree in Otago in theater and sociology. I knew that I liked performing. I knew that I liked people, and not that I like people. I like the way that people kind of interact and how that works.
Sorry, okay.
No, I love it. I love it.
It's like you're all quite a close. Yes, people reading what's going on.
I mean, people. It's funny. I do. The majority of my work has always been performance facilitating or program delivery. So it's always been some kind of holding relationship, holding people, or holding space. A combination of the three. And it's like people, I think, see me in those roles, and the expectation or the assumption is sometimes, oh, you must be working with people. You must be very sociable. You must be extroverted. And the opposite is true. The opposite is true. I am a massive introvert. I get quite tired quite quickly as well. I like people, but I also, in terms of like my personal enjoyment, like alone time, time in nature, time of books, big reader is where I spend a lot of my personal time. But I stepped into those kind of roles, I think, because one, again, like the anxiety thing, I noticed that I wasn't a natural at them. Like I was quite awkward. I was quite anxious. I was very anxious in some instances. I wanted to understand that for myself better. I wanted that to be an easier process for myself. And then also seeing it in others, I wanted to make sure that the way that I was showing up to a space contributed to that space in a way that other people wouldn't feel the same way. So there are varied success and varied levels of involvement. But yeah, my entry point has always been from the view of I'm not good at this. I'm not a natural at this. So I want to get better. I want to focus on it. And I want to make sure other people who also find it tricky have an easier experience because of the way that I show up for the work, whether it's theater or mental health or anything.
Can I say, like, for what reason you want stand up for? I can't even explain what, but just sitting here, hearing what you just say, I have exactly the same tendency. People talk about extroverted. I need my time. I can just be here by myself 12 hours, no problem.
Yep.
Yeah. When I people, because I love people, and so I show up, but I get tired easily. I can't stand too long, but it always drain my energy. I can so relate to everything you say. That's crazy.
I think it's true for a lot of people, especially actually a lot of people in the arts and a lot of people in mental health as well. There's a lot of crossover. I think introverts who can do extroversion well is a really common trait. Like people who recharge and find personal enjoyment in quite solitary experiences and that personal time, but still have the skill sets and have the technical ability and aptitude for activities and spaces and skills that we would associate with extroverted people.
Honestly, if I did look at you just here, what? It's like very, you know, like what I say is that this is that very deep sense of human being, you know, that very deep sense of it's what's beautiful as a compliment.
No, I think I'm quickly, because I used to feel quite guilty about it as well. Especially when I was younger, I used to feel like I should be able to do the social thing. I should be going to parties. I should be doing the kind of stereotypical kind of expectation for young people, especially young people in the arts, like the expectation of, oh, you work in theater, like there must be drinks afterwards, there must be cocaine happening in the back for him, there must be, which was happening. It was never something, it was never something that I was particularly interested in. I didn't have any kind of judgment towards it, but it wasn't just something that I was pulled towards. It also just wasn't something that I was invited into a lot, because I was quite anxious, was quite introverted, and interaction when it wasn't in like a curated session, like if I wasn't working, I'm quite an awkward person, and that's gotten me into trouble a few times, like when people teaching or facilitating or performing. And then sometimes you have this thing where people come up afterwards and they're expecting the same kind of persona. They're expecting the same person identity in front of them. And they get met with a kind of awkward, bumbling, doesn't quite know when to speak, doesn't know when to jump into conversation, or I think that can throw people off sometimes. All of that saying, old person, I think is definitely a compliment. I'm quickly realizing that that's okay to exist in that space of actually going home and having a book and having watching a TV show, spending my weekends going into the park and having time alone is actually fine.
So go back to it's fascinating. I love what you just said as well, because it truly sounds like it was a process knowing through the study that you've been through the place that you've been to, and through the work that you've been to, and it's like slowly finding out who you are for your work. So yeah, but then from, and performing art to say performing art, is it a correct word?
Yeah, performing arts. Yeah,
Yeah,
performance. Yeah,
to make
that journey.
yeah, what draw you into it, or is some or something? Yeah.
I think for me specifically, I've always been an anxious person. To the point where less so nowadays, but early on in my life, like quite debilitating. I was the sort of person where if I was invited to something or if I was going into something, like I would stand outside for 20 minutes before I walk in and just prepare myself. Or I would arrive an hour early and I would go for a walk around the place where the stuff would be happening. And I'd be kind of like shaking and breathing and kind of control my thoughts at the same time. And that has always been a part of my experience, almost been part of my experience. I think that influenced by going into kind of performance is the thing about acting and the thing about those roles again is that because they are constructed specifically designed spaces where you can exist more freely, like the skill sets involved in them are easing tension, are around speaking up, are around using your body, they're around expression. And I think one of the reasons I stepped into those spaces was because it was that those skills were inaccessible in my regular living, but I was able to step into those and kind of inhabit that for a short amount of time. And that was really freeing.
Wow.
And so even in the performance, mental health and that kind of, that experience of feeling quite trapped when I wasn't performing, when I wasn't in a project, when I wasn't working, that influenced a lot of the work that I want to do. I want to explore mental health. I want to explore personal identity and humanity and the barriers that people have stepping into it.
Say something as well. I hear what you're saying because how you define a way, a platform where you can still channel the energy, but in a much more structured environment where you have some sense of control as well.
Yes.
So that even in that brief whatever moments you can truly channel whatever that you have in a safe space and environment.
100%. Yeah, control. I think control, for better and for worse, control is like a massive part of it. Like I felt more myself when I was performing on stage than it was in my everyday life.
Wow.
By far, by a large margin.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I've like moving into like that connection was always there between performance and mental health. I shifted into directing when I was I did my master's. I ended up doing my master's in, the degree was called text and performance. It was in London and it was a mixture of a range of things, but theory, scene study, dramaturgy, writing and directing predominantly. And writing and directing, you kind of had to choose between. We had two kind of key modules in my master's. Most people did 2 of 1, and there were a couple of people who did 1 of each, 1 writing module, 1 directing module. I went into it thinking I want to do 2 directing. I did not think of myself as a writer. I did not think of myself as using language in a written format at that time. And because of the numbers, because of some of the kind of practical admin stuff, I think I ended up doing 1 writing module and 1 directing. Even I asked for 2 directing and they were like, no, we'll give you 1 of each. And I remember it's funny. The masters were split into 3 terms. And so the first term I did some of everything. The second term you made your decision and you did directing, writing, some combination. And so after that first module, it became time to pick what you want to do. And I wrote down to directing. After having a really good experience with the writing teacher in the first module, he's passed unfortunately now, but wonderful man, very grumpy, had a very mixed reputation in the school. Some of us loved him, some of us despised him. He was known for being very, very blunt. And I remember we got along fine. And I remember in that second term, I put down directing twice. And he came up to me afterwards as they were handing it out. And he was like, just so you know, you're going to be in my writing class for the first semester. Sorry. And he walked away. Nope. And literally, and I thought, oh God, I was screwed it. I thought I had absolutely ruined my relationship with this man. Because He would tell you as well. He would tell you.
But actually, he's trying to let you know, I really like you. I want you to stay with the writing class.
It was a bit of that. I actually, first idea for my master's thesis was to write around sexuality, specifically around asexuality as well in that world, which I was kind of experimenting with that kind of label and identity for myself. And then we went through that second module and it went really well. And then the third one, it came time and I did directing. So I moved back into that and it was wonderful. It was, both of them were really excellent teachers. In between the second and third, because in the third you also start working on your thesis. Between that, I ended up being mugged in a park in London.
Oh my God.
So
I'm so sorry to hear it.
no, it's it's really funny. I tell this story, and the mugging is now such an inconsequential part of it that I never, it doesn't really register with me that it was a big. I was mugged in a park. It was three young people who ended up taking a knife to me and then stealing my phone and no scar, thankfully.
Thank God.
Yeah, thank God. And it's funny because for about a month after that, there were definitely some experiences. Like it was in the park where I would walk just regularly. So I'd been there loads by that point. And I would say for about a month after going to that park, like you would feel it in your body. You'd be like, I'm safe. I feel like really uneasy being here. Like my limbs feel a bit weak and my heart is kind of moving faster.
Your body got trauma.
Yeah, your body remembers. And that lasted for about a month. And after that, it kind of like eased off and I kept going and that was okay. At the same time, that was a kind of inciting incident for mental health experiences. So that kind of anxiety that I felt beforehand to kind of erupt a little bit. And so I ended up having an experience of psychosis following it. And the period after that moved very, very quickly. So I remember really clearly after that, I was with the ambulance driver afterwards and we were having this wonderful London man. Remember specific interaction with him afterwards, who's like, they had little like torches that they would keep in their along with a range of different stuff.
Yeah.
And he handed me his torch and he was like, if it ever happens again, what you do is, and he took my hand and he wraps it up and he go, you use that and you walk.
You're human.
Yeah.
It's just that
was difficult. Yeah. It was a beautiful moment. Like it's something that's going to stop.
Yeah.
And at the same time,
it touched my heart. The fact that someone would just say that as a professional and knowledge being through was tough.
And at the same time, he saw my kind of personal reaction to it and he recommended, hey, I also think you should chat to your GP or someone about it. Just the mental health aspects of it, because that made me really tough. And so I did, and I went to see my GP. And then I don't remember what that conversation went like. I think I essentially just talked about how anxious and about how I was feeling. But I remember her looking very concerned. And so she passed me off to another specialist who passed me off to another specialist. And in the span, I think of about 2 weeks, I'd seen maybe 4 or 5 different people who started asking me different questions around some thoughts that I was having and some got into voice hearing at that point.
Yeah.
So asking me around that. And by the end of it, I'd seen all these different people, couldn't tell you what their roles were or what they were focused on. Ended up with a misdiagnosis, actually, I should say now, but a diagnosis at the time of paranoid schizophrenia.
Oh my God.
I think started on the kind of,
I'm sorry, I just want to clarify the reason why I say, my God, is because it's a misdiagnosis. That is the worst thing. To give people a diagnosis that
yeah. I mean, it's funny. I mean, my journey with schizophrenia, which is sounds like a terrible book title, is a real tricky one. I think it's still on my file. I think it is still technically my diagnosis. It's absolutely not the experience.
But I agree because I mean, like, there's a thing. If people ask me, do I hear voices? I will say yes. it's not like voices. I know sometimes I talk to myself because that hearing voices can be so fun. To be honest, yes. Now, like the internal dialogue,
Yep.
the inner knowing,
Yeah.
sometimes I got chills like something's going to happen and later on happen.
Exactly.
Like, do I say that it's also like, yeah, but I have experienced things that so bizarre. I can't even people.
Yeah. Like here, I mean, I think I am not in their shoes. I don't have that skill set, that knowledge. And so it's a complete assumption, me like speaking to it. I would say, and this was also over 10 years ago now, but I would say the experience of anxiety that I had and the relationship to my thoughts that I had, which was very persistent, very persecutory, and very constant. And it felt out of my control. It felt like external. At the time, at the time I would have told you, oh yeah, no, there's another person in my mind and it doesn't feel like me.
Yeah.
And of course, like the doctor or clinician hearing that goes a certain direction. That's actually like quite like the experience itself hasn't changed over the years. Describe it and how I would frame it has quite dramatically. But at the time I was 21. I didn't know what was happening. And so I was kind of swept up into this, again, NHS system. So a system under stress. So again, 4 or 5 different specialists. It's funny, like years later, because the misdiagnosis conversation happened around 3 or 4 years after that point. I was back in New Zealand. I'd gone through early psychosis intervention, so EPI. And at the end of that relationship, the psychologist, I think, I'm misspeaking now, but the person I was working with, who was seeing me on a weekly basis, ended that I was aging out of the service and at 25. And she mentioned, she was like, really enjoyed your time together, all of that kind of stuff. Here are the next steps. We're going to make sure that you have someone that this continues, which was wonderful. He in general was wonderful. And at the end, our very last session together, she said, I just want to let you know as well, obviously I can't make that decision. I don't have the power to change the actual diagnosis. I think schizophrenia, and you don't have to do anything about it. But I just want to let you know that that's what I think. And she set me up with a psychotherapist who I'm still with today, who is incredible, is by far the best support I've ever had in my life, alongside people. But it's from that point, the process of like comprehending this diagnosis felt like its own like real interesting mental health journey as well. Because again, I after that point, after I ended up with the primary schizophrenia diagnosis, it's such a strong label.
Yeah, I know where you're coming from, working in mental health. I feel because if people don't understand this, even in the structures, this hierarchy of labor, mental health diagnosis, and that is like top end of like the resources that can give into it. But that's why I felt like when you were 21 and you are really, like doing the best you can, study and all that. And to you just need help. You just want help. Like, and without that understanding of even what the diagnosis is, it was just happy someone see you, talk to you. Yes. Like kind of help you to unpack who you are. But in the end of the day, I think, like now, even probably for you, when you look, it was just someone who really able to read human being accurately, able to process a lot of the kind of actions. And even because you were so attuned with people's needs and all that, so quite often you're not necessarily able to differentiate what is you and what's not yours. And especially when you also sounds like you have critical of your own system. You're putting a lot of credit to that. Actually, and to be honest, I think as a society, we failed to do that. Like, just need to diagnose with someone. If at the time someone just said to you, and so psychiatrist, but I was just saying, like, even for me, now 53, I understand why I'm going through myself. Yes, medication helped me, but man, I only just come to realizations that I have sensitive.
That was the word that my therapist used as well. I remember saying it for the first time and I thought it was an insult. I thought it was feeling it around me. He was like, there are some members of the population who are just a little more sensitive to that stuff. And I was like, wait, what? What are you saying? But I agree. I think that's right. Like I think there are, and there are studies around the community as well, but there are members of the community who are just a little bit more kind of not aware. It's not like a skill set, but it's just something I've been noticing. Yeah.
I always just lately able to see
Yes.
yes. Because that's why I'm hyper empathetic. That's why I'm able to, like when seeing someone upset, that I will just, be the first to respond to it without people saying anything to me. That's why people will come to me with secret. Naturally, but they will say it's doing people wrong. That wow. So that's why I just want to acknowledge. I totally hear what you're saying. I can so resonate.
It's so funny. That's such a that similar experience. I've often been the person people have confided in. Again, for better. For better. Yeah. I mean, schizophrenia is such a funny one as well, because I realized that after the misdiagnosis conversation, I started doing research around that. My worldview was shattered at that point. I bet it was disaster. So actually, taking it back, I received the schizophrenia diagnosis. And alongside other things, I was given the choice of, okay, we recommend that you leave or consider leaving your studies. There is inpatient support. There is more intensive support that we can give you. And it would mean changing these things, moving out of all of that kind of stuff. And at the time, my master's degree was actually going really well. I was having a really positive experience in my master's. And so my response instead was, actually, I want to stay in this. I want to use my master's degree. It was coming up to the time where we were doing our thesis. And I was like, actually, I'm going to make it the point of my thesis.
Wow.
There's no information around psychosis. There was no information around schizophrenia that felt helpful.
You still look 21 though. I don't know.
Yeah.
I just think how can I put your hands
No, I've started getting gray hairs in my head, and I'm very excited about it. I made it the subject matter of my thesis. I was like, okay, I can't find any information online. I'm not being told that much. And there's certainly not any personal, lived experience stories being shared with me. So I'm going to explore it myself. So I ended up making my master's around understanding my experiences, mostly psychosis and voice hearing at that time, as well. A little bit of kind of delusional, romantic delusion stuff that was happening.
So what do you mean by romantic delusion?
A lot of, so there's voice hearing happening. There was an experience of anxiety that was kind of ongoing. And there was a sense of, along with the anxiety, and it's really tricky to kind of heal or separate apart. Along with the anxiety, there was a real panic that people around me were, it sounds, even now, years later, it sounds egotistical to say, and I don't enjoy saying it, but a feeling that people around me were sexually interested in me, and that was motivating a lot of the support that was coming my way, or a lot of tensions from friends or families around me, or from teachers.
Not at all. I'm so pleased, because I think in the field,
I mean, and it was happening.
That's why.
Yeah, it's happening in the context of education as well. To the point where I couldn't go to lectures, or I was uncomfortable in lectures because I was like, my teacher is only complimenting my work because they want to there because they are sexually interested in me.
Yeah.
Which wasn't true, wasn't what was happening.
Yeah.
But that was what the fear was.
Yeah.
And that was happening a lot. That was happening with friends in classroom and with my, I remember my therapist in New Zealand, I shared that it was happening in that relationship. I thought it was going to be disastrous. I thought it was going to be like, cool, we can end this. We can find him someone else. And instead he was like, no, we can work with that. That's totally okay. And that's not what's happening. It's considered and that was really wonderful to not be kind of judged.
And I mean, and anything and everything started from something else. I wouldn't just.
Yeah. And that's, so that continues to this day as well. So I will still have interactions with friends or interactions with teachers where, because I finished a degree a couple of years ago, and it still happens where I will find myself talking to someone and I'll be like, this person, and it will be a thought that just appears out of nowhere. And it will be like, this person's only talking with you because they're interested in that. That's not the language that
I hear you. Yeah, I know what you mean. Because again, you know, like all that is just highlighting, almost like counteract your own credibility and your own talents, really, you know, because you're very talented individuals. So when people come to you instead of saying, oh, you know, it must be, so it's like something else saying, no, something person is kind of playing down.
Yeah, I mean, the reasons for it, where it comes from or what causes it, I don't know.
Yeah.
I just know that my brain will occasionally throw that thought at me. And it becomes a little bit of a management of being like, hey, cool, that's not what's happening. Let's check in with what is like happening in the space. Let's remind ourselves of the reasons of why we're safe right now. All the kind of like grounding
and
techniques.
Self-protective mechanism, because if it's a healthy dose, that's well, like, so that you know you're going to be taking advantage.
Yeah. And like locking down and like becoming more private.
Absolutely.
But yeah, so like that was some of the kind of delusional.
By the way, I know before sitting down, I deep sense of resonance with you. I don't know where is that coming from. And now sitting here, hearing everything you say, I was like, wow, probably that's why I felt like I was connected to. Because everything you say is the things that I also experienced. You know, like the anxiety and also that very sensitive energy and always trying to put up, trying to be the best we can and doing all the best. And because even you come across very genuine, and sometimes I can pick up like that kind of genuineness that people care.
I feel like, because having it, like rounding it off. Actually, I suppose, like the end of the misdiagnosis, because that kind of takes me into where my story is now as well, and the work that I do. Like, I was in London doing my master's, exploring the stuff that was happening through my thesis. And I was at theatrical performances research. So I ended up doing a written component show, and I ended up touring that show around a little bit. But yeah, I came back to New Zealand and I enrolled. I started with EPI and early psychosis intervention. And for around the 2-3 years that I was with them and that I had this show, this work, and I was exploring that identity still, it became the key defining thing of my identity. And I was starting working on lived experience at the same time and advocacy. Because I came back with that show, I reached out to a couple of people being like, hey, I have this work. I'm new to the country, or I'm back in the country. I would like to like share it with people. Do you have community members that it could resonate with?
Your show get award.
I did get an award. There's an award, the Harold and Jean Brooks Award, which it won. And that was, from touring it in London. I came back and I wanted to do the same thing. I was like, okay, I'm with family for support. I'm EPI for support. I want to start working again. And I actually, one of the people I reached out to was Tammy Allen from Changing Mind. And it's 12, 13 years ago now was when my relationship with Changing Minds started. And essentially it was through, hey, I have this show. I'd like to sit in front of people again. Can you help? And Tammy was a director and an activist as well. So she was able to support with that and passing it into community members who. And so my identity through that was being formed around this sense of diagnosis, which I think is true for a lot of people, actually in the early stages. And so 3 years later, when it was, I think this is a misdiagnosis, like my identity shattered. I thought that I was a liar. I thought that I must have been faking it. I thought that I would have been buying into it when I shouldn't have. I felt stupid. I felt angry. I felt like I wasted like the last 3-4 years of my life defining my work and my identity around this.
So lots.
It was big. It was real big. It's funny as well because like at the same time, like my friends knew me as having that part of my identity. They knew me as working in mental health. They knew me as creating art around my mental health. So misdiagnosis came into the conversation. It's interesting. Like a lot of my a lot of the reactions from friends were, oh, amazing, congratulations. Because for them, they saw it the same as recovery. They saw it the same as being over. And it was interesting, like charting that reaction from friends with my own, like the difference was really stark.
Yeah.
And like years later, I mean, I was in that for good, at least a year, kind of navigating that, afterwards learning that the misdiagnosis rate for schizophrenia is absurdly high. It's around 30%. Yeah. Which is a quote I'm pulling out of my butt from a Google search I did years ago, but is a diagnosis that is thrown around. Not thrown around, that's a disservice to clinical practice, but schizophrenia, bipolar, and personality disorders, part of and I mean, there's so many things that can feed into them. Gender feeds into them, and different kind of stereotypes around that. They are diagnoses that are given out not only based off of symptoms, I think, but also given out based off of the level of distress that people experience. And again, gender. So like the amount of men who are given psychoses or schizophrenia as a diagnosis when they are in distress, the amount of women who have BPD or bipolar diagnoses when they are in like distress. Like there's gendered stigma in there as well. Not necessarily because the experience is perfectly aligned to diagnostic criteria. And like you said, like the diagnostic criteria for schizophrenia is super wide.
Exactly. And that's why years ago a study was done looking at DSM and across all different it's ridiculous. It's like, it will never happen in medical field. If someone has a heart attack, it's a heart attack.
Yes.
It's not like, it could be something.
Could be the
I mean, it's a whole different story.
Well, was it even like different countries? I think, I mean, at the time, again, it's not my like expertise, even just from like Googling and searching for myself. I think I remember reading that Japan and the way that they diagnose it, they weren't actually using individual labels. They were implementing like a scale of psychosis symptoms. So they were looking at different ways of framing it. So there is an understanding and a sense that label, like schizophrenia in particular, is not super useful and not fit for purpose. Really.
I agree.
But yeah, I remember after a good like year or so feeling horrendous around that misdiagnosis conversation.
I honestly have to say thank you so much for being so candid, because no one had ever talked about it. How it felt when you're being damaged. You think that you carry it, because at the time it was a critical moment in your life where you're facing all these tremendous issues at the age of 21. So then carrying forward to suddenly being say, oh, by the way, this could be a risk.
Yeah. When you were 21 and you were forming like a sense of who you are, and guesses and big swings and getting it wrong and redefining yourself. I invested so much time into forming my identity around, because also I was starting work as a poet at the same time.
Yeah.
And a lot of the poetry I was writing was around mental health.
But also you trusted all this profession. You will really struggle. They give you something that you kind of finally feel like, I can breathe again. And of course you also get support. That's why you carrying that with you. It's like, wow, that's at least it gives you a sense of purpose in some way as well, isn't it? I'm not 100%. Because I can so resonate with you, because my childhood and all that was just awful. And every time when I think about the reason why I'm still a miracle, that's why my desire is just to make the world a better place, because it's not for myself, because I suffer so much that I want a sense of the world. Same thing, like you carry it not for yourself, you carry it to want to stand as well.
I think as well, I think and this is still a kind of conversation that I think influences a lot of the work that I do, a lot of the conversations I have in my own kind of journey in therapy and everything. A lot of the work that I did, a lot of the motivation I think I took into spaces was motivated by the fact that I thought of myself as a monster. Like I thought of myself as in different, that's a very hyperbolic statement to make, but like in different, in different senses of the word. Like I wasn't good at social interaction, and so I felt weird. I wasn't good at being sociable, and so I felt like a little bit of an outsider. And then going through like anxious experiences, started to think that, oh, something is wrong with me, human correctly. And so I think like I took to the schizophrenia diagnosis, and it was that kind of like exhaling feeling, because suddenly there was a reason for the fact that I felt like I couldn't exist properly. And there were all of these kind of answers that were framed and prepackaged and labeled and given to you. And also as well, like speak like motivation, like as someone who also wanted to understand it and wanted to and put it into my work and explore it, like there was also like a political aspect to it, because once I had that diagnosis, all of the connotations around schizophrenia in media, in art, and reporting, media reporting, are around violence, are around monstrous behavior and harmful behavior. And that is still true today. There's two kind of factors to that. One is that all of that information validated my understanding of myself as being monstrous, or being a monster, being not a great human being. Also, they validated that experience, and also they gave me a path into advocating or fighting against something. I could move forward with like understanding my experience and also trying to fight those kind of labels and that stigmatizing experience. So yeah, I spent a lot of time trying to tell myself that the work that I did in that time, especially just because it was based around misdiagnosis, doesn't mean that it is worthless.
Exactly. I want to echo that as well, because I think, you know, like having someone bring it up front to when the time wasn't ready and challenge people's perception, that is huge. You know, and yeah, I don't think in any sense that you should carry that guilt, because it wasn't even your choice. Yeah.
Yes. No, that's lovely. I think, I think I definitely do. There's like still guilt that like pops up every now and again. And some of it I think is a process of being like, nope, that's not fair. That's me being too harsh on myself. Some of it is trying to rationally kind of assess the power that I still have in those situations, which I think is a good practice for anyone to be like, cool, even if I'm not in a position of power, what agency do I have? Which has affected some of the conversations I've had that with my GP, with doctors, coaches, like following, which has been really powerful. Ironically as well, like the guilt thing, something that's been really, really useful, or as like a question for me, and it sounds quite judgmental, but it's actually not. It started off being like, how can I be a little bit less selfish in this interaction? Because there was an aspect of that, me feeling guilty, that felt selfish as well. It has since changed. The language that I use has shifted a little bit to be like, how can I decenter myself? Which is like, I think a little bit kinder, a little bit more useful to be like, cool, when I feel especially guilty around the misdiagnosis, I'm putting myself in the center of it. I'm putting myself in like the key position in relation to friends and family and work and stuff. I think I kind of step back from it a little bit.
And I think if you really a person, you hide it, not even share it with anyone.
Recovering.
And the fact is, you know, like such a big thing, it devastated you, and you still have that honesty and dignity. Right. You know, like, because you have that sense of guilt, you take that sense of guilt and step forward and say, hey, this is going on. I think that is fantastic as a human being.
I mean, I think like, I know that we're coming to kind of the end of today, but like rounding it off, I actually think like that influence in terms of what pushed me into performing or pushed me into directing and facilitating in any of it, like the feeling, and it was heightened in the schizophrenia and the misdiagnosis, that kind of stage of the journey as well. But like so much of my feeling in spaces has been like, I am at fault here. I'm doing something wrong. I am a monster, or I am even like at its worst into being like, I am harmful. I will cause harm if I enter into these spaces. I think even today, a lot of the work that I do is motivated by the sense of like, if I can be open about that, and I can be honest about that then lets me go into spaces and set up processes or set up space or relationships in a way where if anyone else is feeling that, or for any of these, and those are reasons that I think people can come into a space with those kind of feelings. But if anyone is coming into a space with that kind of feeling, I can acknowledge it, that it's in the room without kind of changing it or kind of trying to counter it or say, no, there's one different. Like I can actually just let it exist in the room and then create a process around it that goes, oh, wherever this has come from, it is clearly an aspect of your humanity. It is clearly something that, like, the world and who you are as a person and the relationships you have and where you exist in relation to other people, all of those things together means that you've shown up to this space and in this stuff, it feels really difficult, but we can create a process that holds it and holds it honestly and with dignity. I think is actually a really beautiful word because it encompasses so much, but we can hold it with that dignity and acknowledge that it's a human experience, and we can still work in a meaningful way, acknowledging all of that. So yeah, that mindset, that through line, that thread through all of it, I think has remained.